It's the beginning of July, which means it is midsummer here in the UK and things are really starting to pop in the garden. Let's have a closer look. So to give you some context about the layout of my garden, obviously got my house at the back there, and then behind me, just in front of my back door to my house, there's this decking area in anthracite colour that's recently put in. Got a sofa up there and I've got lots of pots that I'm going to show you in detail in a second. And we've got beds all along here, behind the camera as well. And then we've got a shed here. It's an east-facing window, so it doesn't get much afternoon sun. So at the moment, well, it's 5 o'clock at the moment, so no sun in here at the moment. So let's have a closer look what I've got in the garden. So this area here, just in front of my back door to my house and on the steps of my decking area, this is a bit of a herb area, so we grow some herbs on these steps that we can use for our cooking and obviously making cocktails as well. So at the back here, this is chocolate mint. So this is a really nice mint plant. If you scrunch it up and put it to your nose, it smells like chocolate and mint. So really interesting plant, really tastes very nice as well. Over here we've got some oregano that is currently flowering. Really nice white flowers it produces pretty much from this point now, midsummer until the end of summer. So that's really nice. We use that for some Italian cooking. Got some marjoram down here that is starting to get into flower. So these will produce little red flowers, really nice herb. And then down here, got some rosemary. Recently planted that up into this pot, this terracotta pot. Classic herb really. And you've got some classic mint. So we use this to make mojitos on an evening sometimes. And then we've got a bay tree at the back here. So this is probably severely root bound. I've not changed the pot for probably about 2 or 3 years. So I do think it's a little bit root bound. Some of the leaves are turning a little bit yellow, a little bit faded. So I will need to up pot that into a bigger pot. Down here in the corner of my decking, next to this water tap where we water our garden, we have this Clematis. So this was actually a cutting I took last year. It's growing on quite nicely, growing all along these sticks that I've put into the pot, and it's starting to go onto this trellis, which was the idea. I've got a long trellis along this wall recently put up, so hoping to have some Clematis that will flower nicely in the spring all along there. And at the other end I've got some Virginia creeper that I will show you. So it'll be a nice look to have them both kind of cascading against each other, and that'll kind of block off some of the view into this garden from our neighbours. So really happy with how this plant has turned out since I took the cutting last year. So the other end of my decking area, this is the Virginia creeper I was talking about. Got it in a pot down here. It's a very quick grow. I only bought this probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, maybe a bit longer, maybe 8 weeks ago. It was only that high and it's already grown all the way up that trellis. So I think in a couple of years that trellis will be completely full with this Virginia creeper and that Clematis at the other end. I think it will look really nice. Got another Clematis hiding in this corner as well, so hopefully this will trail up along with this Virginia creeper and it'll look really interesting in the spring when the Clematis flowers. Down here got a strawberry plant. So this is one that produces strawberries all year long really, small strawberries. So it's currently flowering, there's a few strawberries on here as well. So that's really happy. This has grown massively. I've had this about 2 years and it was a small plant when I got it. And strawberry plants really do spread in the spread. This one here is a sweet pea plant currently in flower, really delicate flowers. So that's an annual, so we planted that up into that pot a few weeks ago, and it's really rapid grower and it's producing flowers at the moment. Some of them are open and some of them are starting to come to open within the next few weeks. So just in front of my herb area behind the camera, just in front of the back door, I've got some plants in pots just to kind of make this area look a bit nicer on the decking. This Hydrangea macrophylla, I've had this about 3 years, maybe 3 or 4 years in this pot, just coming into flower, nice red flowers. I propagated this plant lots and lots. You'll see loads of it later on in the video when I show you the area down there, but this is a cutting that I took from the plant, so really easy to propagate. I took these last year and they grow really quickly, and can't see any buds at the moment, but I'm sure they will come later in the summer. This is my lemon tree. Took this out during the spring and summer. I did have it indoors during the winter. It was struggling indoors, doesn't like it indoors really, lemon trees, because they tend to suffer from the lack of humidity and they drop leaves like this one did. Since I brought it outside, it's put on lots of fresh growth. You can see it flowering there, and you can see there's the beginnings of some lemons starting to come through, so that's good to see. And then just down there, just for some colour, I've got a dahlia. That's an annual, that just adds colour to this area. So I'm just on the steps that lead down from my decking area down onto the grass where the rest of my garden is on the lower level. Just got 3 pots on here. Got a pot of Nasturtiums. These look really lovely, orange flowers, that's an annual. So we planted these up a few weeks ago and they've come up really well. This is a tomato plant and it's just starting to flower. So I think we bought this from the shop a couple of weeks ago, put it into here, and it seems very happy there. It gets quite a lot of sun as the sun goes over throughout the day. And then down here is a sunflower that we put in this pot. Got quite a few sunflowers I'll show you throughout the video. So this one's looking quite healthy. I think it's maybe a dwarf sunflower plant because I'm starting to see the bud there, and it's quite a short sunflower, so that will start to flower in no time at all. So this area really is the meat and potatoes of my garden, I suppose you could say. This is where kind of the main action is happening. So just in this little corner here, we've got some hydrangeas, got some planted, got 4 of them planted here. These were cuttings that I took from the mother plant up there, and they've grown on very well. Can't quite see any buds forming at the moment, but I'm sure they'll come. And then we've just got a couple in pots as well, we just put down here. And this is another hydrangea. That's a hydrangea back there, and this is another cutting I took from that last year. This is a Hydrangea Annabelle with really lovely, delicate white flowers. So that's a cutting. New growth is coming out from the pot as well. So I've got a couple of those. So that's kind of my hydrangea section. At the back here, hiding, is an Acer. So I've got 2 Acers. I've got one there, I'm not sure whether you can see it at the moment, but I'll show you in a second. Kind of the red Acer, or Japanese maple I think it's called, and then the kind of classic green Acer. That's in a pot at the moment. I've got a lobelia down here, 3 lobelias. And then that's the large Annabelle hydrangea in flower, looking absolutely gorgeous. Down here with the purple flowers is a nepeta. So this is a plant we recently purchased, looking absolutely lovely in flower. At the back, there should be a ticket somewhere. So this one with the pink flowers is a Spirea. Just had to check the label because I can't remember what all these plants are, but that's really nice in flower at the moment. Got some buddleias here at the back, so these grow really tall. Purple flowers are starting to develop. At the back there is a peony that's finished flowering. That's a spring flowering plant. Big white flowers on that early spring. They look really gorgeous. So they'll just sit there until next year when they'll come up again. So just to pick out a few of my favourites in this area, you can see the Japanese maple, or the Acer behind me. Lovely red foliage all year long. Really interesting plants, one of my favourites. Got a nice red rose here. The flowers tend to flop over as they become too heavy for the stems during the summer. So I try to keep them upright, but they always fall down. Got a nice viburnum at the back there. Delicate white flowers during late winter, early spring. And then got a nice larger hydrangea I've had in that spot for about 3 years now, I think. Red flowers, they're starting to bloom, as you can see. Lots of blooms coming through there. More sunflowers just dotted around, they look really interesting. And then in this plant here is a really interesting foliage plant. It's a Unanimous, I think it's called or pronounced, I'm not sure, probably butchering it. But the new leaves come out all white and they slowly turn green during the season. So just snaking around my border now, got some really interesting plants. I've got another lovely pink rose there, really prolific bloomer, this plant. Every year has loads and loads of blooms. They're absolutely fantastic. They do tend to hang down a little bit, but that's par for the course for a rose. And then got another viburnum, again that will flower nicely in late winter, early spring. Got a honeysuckle climbing up into that ivy, so the ivy is a nice backdrop on this wall, and the honeysuckle climbs up that, which is that lot up there, and that will flower nicely in the summer, so it's just starting to flower now. Got a nice berberis over here, really interesting foliage, had that a couple of years. And then down here I've got some hebes, so these are just coming into flower. This one's in flower, really nice, interesting purple flowers, really nice big bush. And then down here, this is called Salvia. So again, really nice purpley blue colours on the flowers, really nice section. So in this corner of the garden is more my rhododendron and azalea section. So got 3 rhododendrons, larger rhododendrons. This one down here is a smaller one because I bought it this year. So they flower really nicely during the early spring. So I think that back one in the corner is purple flowers, that's red, and this is white flowers. So nice contrast to each. And we've got a bunch of azaleas, got this one in this pot, a couple behind there, that one there. So that's 4, 5 azaleas in this section. The big plant at the back is, I believe, a Photina pink marble, really prolific grower. Looks really interesting in early spring as it pushes out new foliage. They come out really pink and looks really interesting against the green foliage it already has. So that's the azalea and rhododendron section. So in the final bit of my lower section of the garden, got this in between my shed, my blue shed there, and the rhododendron area. Got a few interesting plants. Got a type of dogwood there, which is really nice. That is called a Cornus Kosa dogwood. So this has really interesting white petals during the early summer, and then they kind of fade and disappear like they have now. And you're kind of left with red berries, which look really interesting, and the birds like it. And apparently they are edible to humans as well, if you can get them before the birds. What else have we got down here? So we've got that purple one in the corner there, is called a Hydrangea. Really interesting plant. It's a shade-loving plant. This section of the garden doesn't get much sun at all, so you need plants that love shade, such as these hostas down here. So I've got 1, 2, 5 hostas in this section. This section really doesn't get much sun at all. And as you can see, they are flowering at the moment. Really beautiful flowers, really like them. And then next to my dogwood is a unanimous again, gold splash. And that is starting to flower. It's the first year that this is flowering, little white flowers, so that's really interesting. And then next to that, in the corner, climbing up that fence, is the mother plant of the Clematis that I've taken cuttings from last year that are successfully growing out. So that's the mother plant, really established plant, growing all along that fence and all on the shed as well. So on this patio section, just in front of my dining room window, this is more of my potting up area that I use to pot up cuttings and other plants that I've got going. So this is why it's a bit of a rubbish area over here. So I've used these boxes to produce cuttings. So I used this to produce my Hydrangea cuttings and my Clematis cuttings from last year. Really easy method to do it. So on this table, I just got a selection of lots and lots of cuttings that I took last year that I don't really know what to do with. So loads of hydrangeas. I must have taken about 100 cuttings of hydrangea plants, and beautifully in flower at the moment. So I've got lots and lots of these. Lots of them are in flower. So if you didn't know, hydrangeas are really easy to propagate. I've got a couple of other propagations as well that I've not yet planted into my borders. I've got this plant here that I can't remember what the name is. I'll put it on the screen if I can find it. I've got 4 of these. I took cuttings last year, I think from a friend, and I successfully rooted them. And then I've got a couple of viburnum cuttings from last year. So new growth at the top, so these are doing well. There's another one there. And I've also got this plant. This is a type of viburnum, I think, that has big white flowers, late winter, early spring. Really interesting plant. Bit of a slow grower this year. Propagated that last year. I've got a couple dotted around, I think. So yeah, this is kind of my potting area, and this is where I keep my things that I don't know what to do with, essentially. If you want to see the indoor plants that I have in my house, then click on the link over here and I'll show you all the plants I have in my house. I will see you there. Thanks for watching.